At 9:27 this morning, Tehran time, the first explosions hit downtown Tehran. Within minutes, smoke was rising over the offices of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. 7 missiles struck the area around his compound. Satellite imagery from Airbus shows the compound heavily damaged or destroyed. The 86-year-old Khamenei had been moved to a secure location. He hasn't been seen publicly in days. But the message was unmistakable.
So this is actually happening. The US and Israel are at war with Iran.
It is actually happening. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched a coordinated military assault on Iran. Israel calls it Operation Roaring Lion. The Pentagon calls it Operation Epic Fury. And the name that will probably stick in the history books, Operation Shield of Judah.
Where exactly have they hit?
Everywhere that matters. Tehran, the capital, took strikes on government ministries, the presidential palace, the National Security Council, areas near IRGC headquarters, University Street, the Jomhuri district, and northern Sayed Kundan, then Isfahan, Qom, Kermanshah, Karaj, Tabriz, Ilam, Loristan province, and the port city of Bushehr, home to Iran's nuclear reactor. It is unclear whether the reactor itself was hit.
And this isn't just Israel this time. The US is directly involved.
Directly and massively, US officials describe this as, quote, not a small strike. Dozens of American attack planes launched from aircraft carriers and bases across the Middle East. The USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Gerald R. Ford, both carrier strike groups, have been deployed to the region for weeks. Reuters reports the strikes are being carried out by air and sea. A US official told Reuters the administration is planning a, quote, multi-day operation.
What did Trump actually say?
Trump announced what he called major combat operations against Iran. He said the objective is to, quote, destroy their missiles and raze their missile industry to the ground. He said the US will annihilate their navy. He wants to prevent Iran from ever obtaining a nuclear weapon. And he explicitly called for regime change, calling on members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps to lay down their arms in exchange for amnesty. If they refuse, his words, certain death.
He's literally telling the Iranian military to surrender or die.
Yes, and critically, he acknowledged that American lives may be lost. This isn't being framed as a limited operation. Al Jazeera's Washington correspondent said Trump is setting the table for a revolution in Iran, 73 years after the CIA orchestrated a coup against the democratically elected Prime Minister Mossadegh, this time with weapons and bombs rather than covertly through the CIA.
How has Iran responded?
With everything they have. Iran launched dozens of ballistic missiles in multiple directions simultaneously. Missiles hit northern Israel. Air raid sirens blared across the country. Israel declared a state of emergency and is calling up 70,000 reservists. Hospitals in Israel are moving patients underground. But Iran didn't stop at Israel.
They went after US bases too.
Across the entire Gulf, Iran targeted Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. That's one of America's most important military installations in the region. Al Salam Air Base in Kuwait. Al Dhafra in the United Arab Emirates. The US Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain. Explosions were reported in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. In Qatar, Al Jazeera's correspondent said he heard at least a dozen explosions, most sounding like Patriot defense missiles intercepting incoming Iranian strikes. Kuwait's defense ministry confirmed it intercepted missiles targeting a base hosting US and foreign personnel.
So this isn't contained. It's already a regional conflict.
Multiple countries are now involved, at minimum in self-defense. Bahrain, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Qatar, and the UAE are all listed as conflict locations. One person in Abu Dhabi was killed by falling debris. In Iraq, strikes on a militia base south of Baghdad killed 5 fighters and injured 3. Ebrahim Azizi, head of Iran's Parliamentary Security Commission, posted a warning. "We warned you. Now you have started down a path whose end is no longer in your control."
Zuri, we need to talk about Minab.
Yes, At approximately 11:30 a.m. local time, a strike hit the Shajareh Tayyibeh primary school in Minab, a city in Iran's Hormozgan province. At least 51 girls have been killed, children between the ages of 7 and 12. 60 more were injured. This was an elementary school, Alistair. State media footage showed the aftermath. The New York Times confirmed the reporting. This has not been independently verified outside of Iranian state sources, but the reports are consistent across multiple agencies, including Al Jazeera, Middle East Eye, and IRNA. 2 additional students were killed in a separate strike in Tehran.
51 children in a single strike. Has the US or Israel responded to that?
Not yet. And it's worth noting, the Israeli military's Persian language spokesman issued a warning before the strikes began, urging Iranian civilians near military infrastructure to evacuate immediately. The question of what was targeted in Minab and whether this was a military target will be one of the most scrutinized questions in the days ahead.
Here's what I can't get past. Wasn't there just a breakthrough in negotiations? Like yesterday?
This is the part that will be debated for decades. On February 27th, literally yesterday, Oman's Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi announced that Iran had agreed to never stockpile enriched uranium, to submit to full IAEA verification, and to irreversibly downgrade its existing enriched uranium to the lowest level possible. Al-Busaidi said peace was, quote, within reach. And then, hours later, the bombs fell.
So Iran was making concessions, and the strikes happened anyway.
That's the reading from much of the international community. There are counter-arguments. US officials have pointed to what they call imminent threats and Iran's ongoing missile capabilities, but the timing is devastating. Politico had reported that Trump advisors preferred Israel strike Iran first. And this comes just 8 months after the US and Israel conducted a 12-day war against Iran, Operation Midnight Hammer, that hit nuclear sites at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan.
CNN noted the timing with Purim.
Yes, symbolically significant. This attack was launched just before the Jewish holiday of Purim, which falls on March 2nd. The biblical story of Purim involves the Jewish people being saved from destruction in ancient Persia, modern-day Iran. Whether intentional or not, the symbolism was not lost on anyone in the region.
What about the markets? Oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz.
This is why the world is watching. 13 million barrels of crude oil transit the Strait of Hormuz every single day. That's 31% of all seaborne crude globally. If Iran attempts to close the strait, the world economy feels it immediately. Oil-linked futures are already up more than 5%. Analysts at Natixis expect oil to jump 5 to 10% when markets open Monday, with global equities potentially falling 1 to 2% or more. CNBC quotes one investment officer, saying this has definitely bigger ramifications than Venezuela. Dow futures have already sunk over 600 points in extended trading. Gold is surging nearly 2%.
And whether this stays contained or becomes a prolonged conflict changes everything.
Exactly. Analysts are framing it as 2 scenarios. If this is a concentrated strike that ends quickly, the oil spike is brief, markets recover. But if it becomes what one strategist called a 3 to 5 week regime change endeavor, markets react, quote, rather badly. Asia would be hit especially hard, given its dependence on Gulf energy supplies. The key variable is the Strait of Hormuz. Last June, when Israel struck Iranian nuclear sites, equities sold off sharply, then recovered once it was clear the strait wasn't disrupted. That's the pattern markets are watching for.
And inside Iran right now?
Communications across Tehran are impaired. NetBlocks has reported a near-total internet blackout across the country. Iranian state media says thousands of IRGC personnel, including several senior officials, were killed or wounded as military bases were struck. President Pezeshkian is reported to be unharmed. But Khamenei's whereabouts remain unknown. Reuters says he was moved to a secure location before the strikes began. The country that was already reeling from the largest protests since the 1979 revolution is now under military bombardment.
Russia called this categorically unacceptable. China opposes it. Where does the world stand?
The international reaction is splitting along predictable lines. Russia has condemned the strikes, ironically dubbing Trump peacemaker, while China has publicly opposed any infringement on Iranian sovereignty. Expect rhetorical condemnation and diplomatic backing at the UN. But direct military intervention from Moscow or Beijing is considered highly unlikely. The Gulf states are stuck in the worst possible position, hosting US bases that are now being targeted by Iranian missiles. They didn't ask for this fight, but they're in the middle of it.
So where does this go, Zuri? What happens now?
What happens now depends on three things. First, does Iran attempt to close the Strait of Hormuz? That would be the single most destabilizing move and would drag the global economy into crisis. Second, how long does this last? A multi-day strike is already confirmed. But a weeks-long campaign aimed at regime change is a fundamentally different war. And third, Khamenei. Is he alive? Can the regime maintain command and control? Iran has been fracturing under the weight of protests, economic collapse, and now military bombardment. Trump is betting that one more push topples it. He may be right. He may also be starting a war that spirals far beyond anyone's control.
51 children in a classroom, and we're calling it Shield of Judah.
The names we give our wars are always aspirational. The reality of war is always something else. Today, the Middle East changed. Tomorrow, the world will be pricing what that means. For everyone watching this, stay close to verified sources. Things are moving fast, and they're not slowing down.